Yud Beis Tamuz is the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe got the news that he was going to be released from where he was exiled in Kastrama. On Yud Gimel Tamuz, the following day, is the day that he actually was released. On Yud Beis Tamuz, the Frierdiker Rebbe said a mimer on the pasuk, Hashem libo oizrei, Hashem is amongst my helpers, vani ere besoino, which is literally translated, I will see the downfall of my enemies. The following day, after he was released, the Frierdiker Rebbe said a mimer that starts off with the word Baruch HaGoimel, thanking Hashem for his goodness and for his miracles. Now, the Rebbe asks a question. Simply, when you hear good news about being released, the first thing should be to thank Hashem. And therefore, seemingly, the first mimer should have been Baruch HaGoimel. After you thank Hashem for what happened, for the past, now you can daven for the future, that that I should see the downfall of my enemies, etc. In order to understand this, says the Rebbe, there's a fascinating and amazing miracle that happened in association with the Geula, in addition to the Geula itself, which people don't pay attention to it. And the Rebbe explains this by saying, we know that generally the way things worked in Russia was that people were being followed the whole time. Everyone was being watched all the time, especially people associated with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and after the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested. Nevertheless, as soon as people found out about the arrest, there were many people that put in all sorts of efforts to try to cause the release and the freedom of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And they did this in an open way, being involved with government officials, going to the offices, etc., etc. In other words, putting themselves in tremendous danger. And nevertheless, an amazing miracle. All of these people that tried and put an effort for the release of the Frierdiker Rebbe, nothing bad happened to any of them. No harm came to any of them in any way whatsoever. The Rebbe says, in a certain sense, this miracle is a greater one than the Geula itself. Both when we look at it in a logical way, based on Gashmias, and also when we look at it Beruchni Yisayinyonim. Physically, says the Rebbe, even though there's no doubt about it that the release of the Frierdiker Rebbe was surely a big miracle, but nevertheless, in some ways it's associated with Teva, with nature. There were certain efforts put in, both in Russia as well as from out of the country, certain pressure put on for the Frierdiker Rebbe's release. So even though, of course, it was a miracle, but you could still hang it on some things associated with nature. But in regards to these individuals that put their lives on the line for the Frierdiker Rebbe, especially these people that have to go to the government offices, etc., it doesn't make sense at all how it was that no harm came to them. Spiritually speaking, says the Rebbe, the Geula, the Frierdiker Rebbe, we can understand, is connected with all the Mesiras Nefesh that the Frierdiker Rebbe had, all the Frierdiker Rebbe's amazing schusim, merits that he had, from his fathers, from the Rabbeim, his own schusim. And nevertheless, there was still plenty of pain and suffering until he's finally released. And yet these people that are working and trying to help the Frierdiker Rebbe, some of them definitely had no Mesiras Nefesh for Torah and mitzvahs, some of them not even keeping Torah and mitzvahs themselves. In other words, they don't have all those chusim. And nevertheless, they're not harmed in any way whatsoever. Everything goes so smoothly for them. Says the Rebbe, how did this all happen? Says the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe affected this. He brought this about by saying this Maimer Havaya Libo Israel, Hashem Libo Israel. How so? Says the Rebbe, in the Maimer, the Frierdiker Rebbe asks that seemingly at first glance, the Pasuk is saying Hashem Libo Israel, Hashem is amongst my helpers. It sounds like there are many other helpers and Hashem is amongst them. How does that work? The truth of the matter is we know Einoid Mulvadi, there is nothing besides for Hashem. Only Hashem is the one that helps us in every single thing. Now we'll see a little bit later how the Frierdiker Rebbe answers that question, but the general attitude that the Frierdiker Rebbe is laying down over here and putting this, as the Rebbe calls it, a psak in Torah, that a verdict, the Torah itself is saying that the truth of the matter is there is nothing else besides for Hashem's help. There is. Even though at first glance it seems to be there are all these people that are helping out and putting in their efforts for the release of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and therefore they're placing themselves in danger and they would seemingly need lots of merits to be saved. But the truth of the matter is, Einoid Mulvadi, there's nothing besides for Hashem. And the full help comes completely from above. And This, says the Rebbe, was really felt or expressed. You could see this even in those people that helped, that they realized that, in other words, that it's not about them, when they put themselves completely in danger, doing things that are not logical at all, and therefore by that, in a certain sense, removing their own mitzias, their own beings or entities, and now in their activities could fully be expressed in an open way that it's not about their help, it's not about them at all, it's all Hashem's help that's going through them, but it's all about Hashem. And says the Rebbe, now it all makes sense. If we have this attitude, we understand this, why no one's being hurt by it. Because if it's the help of Hashem himself, it's not possible that someone should get hurt. Furthermore, in a certain sense, you don't even need a miracle for it, because how could someone hurt, so to speak, Hashem himself that's giving this assistance? So by the Frierdiker Rebbe explaining this point that it's all Hashem's help, that itself causes that they won't be harmed. So the Frierdiker Rebbe was bringing about that these Yidden shouldn't be harmed. On the other hand, says the Rebbe, this does not mean that they don't deserve any credit or any reward, chas v'shalom, especially someone that helped the Frierdiker Rebbe, just because we're saying, oh, it's as if they don't exist, it's only Hashem's help. So don't they deserve any credit? Says the Rebbe, in order to understand this, we're going to look at another piece of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, Hashem libo oizroi. What does this really mean? That Hashem is amongst the helpers. We asked before, Hashem is the only helper. So the Frierdiker Rebbe explains over there, and he says, oizroi means when you do a mitzvah, when you elevate something, the spark within that thing, that itself becomes sort of your assistance, that godly spark in it. Or to put it in another way, we know the concept that when a Yid does the mitzvah, every time you do a mitzvah, that creates a good malach. Those are the oizroi, those are the helpers. But then the Frierdiker Rebbe adds another point. The Frierdiker Rebbe says it's similar to the idea that Talmidim, one's students, are called his children. Now, how does that come into the picture? Says the Rebbe, because the Frierdiker Rebbe is trying to emphasize that in addition to the idea that oizroi just means the sparks and the godly energy that's in those things that you're elevating or the mitzvahs that you're doing, there's also the simple idea that there are people that helped him, oizroi. But by helping him, in a certain sense, they now get an association with him. They're becoming like his Talmidim, like his children. And that's the pshat, Hashem libo oizroi. These are the people that now became the Frierdiker Rebbe's helpers, so to speak, and becoming his Talmidim and children. And what we're saying is, yes, on the one, since they have Bechira Chavsha, since they chose to get involved in this, they had free choice, and they chose with their own free choice to do all of this effort. Therefore, in truth, they do get reward. This is not in contradiction to what we said before. All the help is coming from Hashem. As he explained, as the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, what does it mean, Hashem li be'oizroi? What we mean is that the Shem Havaya, that godliness itself should be expressed, should be felt inside of those oizroi, inside of those that help him. So on the one hand, yes, they're getting rewarded because it was their choice, but at the same time, it's felt inside of them that it's all Hashem's help. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand why this Maimer comes before Baruch HaGoimel. Before the Frierdiker Rebbe could be, so to speak, satisfied and thanking already Hashem for his own miracles, he wants to first ensure that all of those that help him shouldn't get harmed. And not only that, they should get their reward. And this is all contained in this pasuk, Havaya li ba'izroi, that Hashem is the one that helped, so therefore they shouldn't get hurt, because all Hashem, and furthermore, they should even be rewarded. The Rebbe now turns to the end of the pasuk, Vani ere besoine, which we translated seemingly simply means I should see the downfall of my enemy. And the Frierdiker Rebbe asks, even though we're speaking about, yes, people that are the enemies of Hashem, but seemingly the request should be that sin should be gone, not the sinners. And the Rebbe explains, the people that arrested the Frierdiker Rebbe in truth were the enemies of Hashem. And seemingly then, it should be Vani ere besoine in the literal sense. It seemingly makes sense that we want to see the revenge against them or the downfall. That's what you would think. And this is what the Maimer is coming to negate, that no, even regarding such people, we want that it should be that they should do tshuva. Says the Rebbe, so this is now the connection to the first part of the pasuk. When we understand that Einoid Mulvadi, there's nothing besides Hashem. Hashem is the only one that helps me. We also come to understand that the fact that there could be an enemy, someone that's causing opposition, is not coming from himself. It's all being caused by Hashem. And therefore, there's no room for Ere Besoine in the literal sense to take revenge. So what then does mean Ani Ere Besoine? The Rebbe explains. we understand that every sort of opposition causes the Yid to only come to higher levels. That was the point of opposition, to come to higher levels in Avodas Hashem. Says the Rebbe, that's the pshat of Ani Ere B'Soinoi. Ere means you come to a darga of Re'iyah, of being able to see, of being able to have clarity in your Avodas Hashem, being able to see godliness. V'ani Ere, how does a Yid come to Re'iyah, to this darga of Re'iyah? That's through the enemies, through the oppositions. Says the Rebbe, once there's this feeling of Hashem li ba'oizroi v'ani ere b'soinoi, that everything is from Hashem, both in the help as well as even the opposition. Now we can come to that full feeling of Baruch HaGoimel, of thanking Hashem for all the amazing things He does. And it comes down in Toiva Nirva Nigla. And as the Rebbe quotes, the Frierdiker Rebbe saying that even all those that support Torah should all be fortunate and blessed, b'chol tuv, and all good.